rise up, rise up. The voices from the ghetto, strong like drums of steel. Rise up Zambia, rise up Zambia, oh mother Zambia. Rise up Zambia, oh mother Zambia. Oh, rise up Zambia, rise up Zambia, Zambia. My mother Zambia, we raise the flag so high, we shine the spirit of the people. We lift, let's give each other's hopeless hearts a voice. Oh, mother Zambia, your name echoes through the valley line. Let's give the people of Zambia hope again. Yes, let's go. Let's make the people its voice to say, we rise with you to a brighter day.
Strong enough to acquire, to secure another mandate? That's the question. As Brian Mundubile presented himself as a credible alternative, and what do the numbers on the ground really tell us? That's what we are going to be looking at here. Joining me is Pastor Kambo Lumbila. Is a leadership consultant and is also a community leader. Pastor Kambo has been here several times and we all know him. Kambo, welcome. And
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, excellent. And also in the house today, I told him Avene Bachalo is here.
Wonderful family. Good day and good day to your dear audience. And Pastor, good evening. Good day to you as well.
Thank you.
No, we need to introduce you properly, Mwamba. We need to introduce you properly. Ambassador Mwamba is a former diplomat to the Republic of South Africa, and he also represented Zambia in Ethiopia and to the African Union. He also served as permanent secretary and a private secretary to former President Chiluba. He is a political analyst and a political journalist. You can see from his background. If you don't know Ambassador Mwamba, you are not a Zambian.
Thank you for your kind words.
Mwamba, it's an honor to have you here, and I just want you to know that we do not take it lightly. I know you are a very busy man. Gentlemen, I am not going to beat about the bush and waste your time and the audience's time. The question we are asking today, and I'm going to be making it scrolling at the bottom, who has the momentum to win? Those of you watching, this is not about the Tonse Alliance versus UPND or whatever. These men are here by virtue of what they do. Like I said, Ambassador Mwamba is a political analyst and a journalist. Kambo is a leadership consultant. Let me begin with a very simple, straightforward question. We are not even going to make this discussion technical. We are just going to be simple and on the ground and take it to the point. If the election were held today or tomorrow, who do you believe currently has the momentum to win? And why? Mwamba.
Thank you very much. if you asked me that question 2 months ago, I would have told you that President Hakainde Hichilema was headed for a win because of the fragmented opposition. At that stage, the opposition remained fragile and divided, and all efforts to unite the opposition, almost 2-year-long processes to unite the opposition, had failed. Remember, we had started with the United Kwacha Alliance. We went to Tonse. Then there were other initiatives. Some even ended up into political parties. Like Zambia We Want was also a coalition unity of the opposition. It ended up into a political party. There's a People's Pact that that was driven by Socialist Party President Dr. Fred Membe. That also collapsed, when faction members withdrew. If you had asked me that question 2 months ago, I would have said President Hakainde Hichilema was headed for victory. Orange Alliance, led by Citizen First President Harry Kalava, also failed to mount a strong alliance of opposition parties. It attracted minority parties other than the Citizen First. But we say one day is such a long time in politics, and we have seen the last 2 months that Brian Mundubile came from nowhere, and we'll discuss in details how the strength behind Mundubile has made him emerge as a leading candidate from the opposition. And this race has boiled down to a 2-horse race between President Hakainde Hichilema and Brian Mundubile.
All right. I'll ask you a follow-up question after Kambo responds to the same question. If the election were held today or tomorrow, Kambo, in your view, the way you see things, who would win the election?
I think we have to make a clear distinction between a structural advantage and campaign energy and momentum. I think that when you look at the structural advantage of incumbency that President Hichilema has and what it takes to win an election in Zambia in terms of organizing a network of not just ardent supporters, but people who can actually turn out the vote on election day. From an objective point of view, unless the ambassador knows something that I don't know, which I'm very curious to know, I think that the president still stands a very good chance of winning this election just because of the structural advantage that he has. Now, the question of whether we see the opposition energy that we are seeing materialize on election day is a totally different question. But for me, who's a consultant, I'm really interested in the numbers. I'm interested in the structure. I'm interested in how do we get voters to the poll and how do we actually, how does a party actually win an election? From a structural perspective, I think this is a +1 for the president. I'm yet to see something convincing from the opposition in terms of gathering that momentum from their rallies, turning it into a structure that actually wins the election.
So Ambassador Campbell says the opposition is not structured, even if Mundubile seems to have gathered the momentum him and Makebi have gathered. Let's hear your evidence supporting Mundubile's candidacy. What is the evidence you are putting across?
First of all, you have to go back to the history of our country. The most structured political party in 1963 was the African National Congress. But you saw the momentum come from nowhere, from a set of boys that broke away from the ANC, formed UNIP, and within 2-3 years, they were the leading factor, and ANC became a backroom party. We only needed to make government in 1963 when the first elections, almost democratic elections, were held. The next set of elections in 1968, you saw that UNIP was struggling because of the legacy issues of ANC held a stronghold, but he was also breaking away with friends like Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe and the others. President Kaunda was forced to form a one-party state by 1973. 17 years later, a movement emerged from nowhere, the Call for Multi-Party Democracy. Dr. Kaunda was the most structured party. It had countrywide party structures, offices, even
Grassroots,
companies,
everything.
and the incumbency of holding on to state institutions. But a movement of the people came, and within few months, Dr. Kaunda lost that election to the extent of 76%, despite him being the incumbent president, one of the most respected elder statesmen in Africa and in the world, despite him running one of the most solid intelligence system, despite having all state-owned enterprises, and they were very, very strong at the time, supporting him, giving him vehicles, cars, and everything. The people's voice reigned supreme. Chiluba emerged winner. 20 years later, 10 years later, 2001 elections, the MMD had been in power for 10 years. They had developed structures. They had held the reins of the state for 10 years. Of course, there was a rupture that happened within the party, which saw splinter parties like Heritage Party and FDD form. But MMD was extremely strong. A party from nowhere that had been formed 2 years before, 3 years before, Anderson Mazoka's UPND. No one saw it. The noise in the media was about FDD, Heritage, and the MMD. And UPND and Mazoka nearly won that election without even people recognizing how much a force was. Get us back to 2011. Michael Sata, first you see him grow in 2006, and then 2011. And the 2011 is symbolic because for the first time in 20 years, Zambia didn't have any serious debt, although, of course, Honorable Msokotwane had accumulated foreign debt from $500,000 to from $500 million to $3.8 billion. So anyway, we're low debt income. But look at the parameters. For the first time, we had the government that had built up reserves up to $4.5 billion reserves. The first time in almost 20 years. The inflation rate was now a single-digit rate, and the cost of living was one of the lowest. But our people rose. They were fatigued with the MMD. Didn't matter whether RB, Rupiah Banda had these good economic indicators. Our people kicked out both the MMD and Rupiah Banda and chose the man that they said was a one-man show, was a lone ranger. He didn't have systems and structures, Michael Sata. 2021, the UPND had been trying from 1998 to 2021. They were one of the most organized political parties. They never suffered any splinter during the entire duration of the UPND in opposition. I think Anderson Mazoka had set up a very solid structure that really, really helped the party come together. Despite the assault from the state, you saw UPND remained solid. But they were failing to cross over and win elections. In 2001, that was their strongest performance. 2006, they were reduced to the third party. Michael Sata's Patriotic Front took over. 2008, the presidential by-election, Sata came second, UPND dismally performed. 2011, Sata took over the reins, UPND was third. 2016, we saw the dominance of UPND re-emerging. And then 2021, they took over power. If you look at the parameters, you recognize that UPND couldn't win power in all these years, over 20 years, for one simple reason, that the party didn't have a national character. The party was deemed a regional party, and that the leadership had failed to branch out to the rest of the country. And you saw the deliberate effort by Hakainde Hichilema beginning 2016, where he put one of the dominant political voices from the northern region, GBM, as his running mate, even bypassing the late Dr. Canisius Banda, who had been a loyal vice president from the East.
For many years, yeah.
Yeah, so those were deliberate efforts for Hakainde Hichilema to show the country that I am not tribal, I am a national in character. And in 2021, when the fallout of GBM and the other factions came up, he still picked a northerner in, Whitney Kapambwe Mtalena Lumango as running mate. This was a deliberate, she's not a very strong politician, but Hichilema needed to show that my party has a national character, that I'm a leader for all Zambians. And that's when he took over power. The PF was doing very well. I know we might differ here, but it was doing very well. It had built some of the best infrastructure in the last 50 years. It had built dams, power stations, schools, health centers and district hospitals, colleges, universities. There's nowhere where the PF didn't touch in terms of infrastructure development. But despite that good report, having bumper harvest even in periods of drought, you see that they built up even food reserves. The national strategic reserves was at their highest in the last 10 years by 2021. For them, their parameters were quite good, like RB's parameters in 2011. So when I say that Munduvile is such a force, I take the background and history of our country.
Okay.
That structures can be there, that you can have state institutions on your side. In the end, it's a feeling of our people. What is the state and feeling of our people? And so Rupiah Banda must have cried and genuinely cried because he didn't understand. If you looked at the economic intelligence report, Bloomberg, Reuters, everyone said he was headed for victory because he had built up foreign reserves, he had stabilized the economy, he had brought in foreign investment for the first time in 20 years. He was a good president. He was ahead. Someone even cited the UN Millennium Challenge goals, the development goals, that Zambia was among the top, I think, 5 countries in Africa that was headed to achieve most of the Millennium Development Goals. But what was the view of our people? The view of our people was that this is a corrupt government. It has failed us repeatedly. We gave it 20 years and they must go. This is a feeling the country, in my view, has about President Rupiah Banda, that was given an opportunity to run the country in the last 5 years. But what has it given us? Thank you, my brother. It's a debate. You can come in.
Oh no. I'm not actually here to debate. I'm not here to. I have no horse in the race, so to say. My perspective is really just coming from a leadership analysis point of view. So I'm not here to defend the UPND or side with the Tonsi Alliance whatsoever. But I want to kind of tack onto something that you have highlighted, which is very important, and that is the sentiment of the people. With all these elections that you have highlighted, the turning point was always a sentiment of the people. Yes, Kaunda had the structures and the machinery of the government, but it was a sentiment of the people. After 27 years of rulership and then going through a period of shortages and all kinds of economic upheaval, so there was this groundswell of momentum in terms of we need to change government. So MMD comes in and rides that wave, again, born of the people. When you look at 2001, and that is the election where Mwanawasa gets elected and the UPND comes to the forefront, that was also an election that could have possibly been a change election, but the people still sided with MMD and still gave them a chance. Again, it was the voice of the people. And when you come to 2011 and you talk about the election of Mr. Sata, the thing again that turns that election is the voice of the people. The people, yes, saw the economic indicators that were good, but the thing that lost MMD that election was corruption. The people felt that the MMD was corrupt to the core. So though the economy was doing well, yes, the economy was on a trajectory of growth. They said, we cannot have corruption. So the people made that a change election. When you come to 2021, you also have the same situation happening. The economy was weakening. Zambia had for the first time defaulted in paying its debts, and the people had enough of cadreism. They had enough of all these unfettered kind of power that the Patriotic Front had brought into the public domain. Again, it was the people that rose and said, we need to give the UPND a chance. So the question, I think, and I think none of us sitting on this panel can answer this question until election day. Do the people of Zambia feel that what they have had in the UPND has been worse than what they had in the PF? Therefore, it warrants a change in government. Okay, so those are arguments that we can have as analysts, et cetera, but I think at the end of the day, the people would decide whether this is a continuity election or whether this is a change election. And again,
Kambo, sorry to cut you short, and to your point, that's the message that the opposition, the leadership in the opposition have been trying to put across, Ambassador, to say the opposition is the people, okay? The opposition is the people. And you are saying that we cannot determine or say that will only be decided by the people at the polls, but we should be able to get to the bottom of certain indicators that will show us to say this is going in a certain direction. Let me raise one point, and the two of you, of course, can respond to this. One of the things people are trying to say to discredit Mr. Mundubile is to say he has nothing to show for his leadership. Okay, he was, of course, he was member of parliament, leader of the opposition in the House, minister in which province? He was provincial minister, Northern province, yeah. And people are saying, and then they try to compare him to HH and say, even before he became president, he was a successful businessman, blah, blah, and all that stuff. So let's try to use those two things and see whether that holds as at 1st August 2026. Does that hold?
Why? Well, if we are going to assess leadership and look at track record, then yes, we should have a debate on that, right? So you have a businessman who had a proven pedigree in the private sector and rises to the presidency and actually proves to be a good economic manager, gets us out of default and puts the country back on the path of economic prosperity. Now, we can have an argument on whether or not that, and I think this is where the UPND is having a problem communicating when it comes to their economic successes. And we can talk about that later. But when we look at the track record that he has, both in the private sector and in government, and then looking at what Mr. Mundubile brings to the floor in terms of his leadership pedigree, how did he perform as a member of parliament? What does he have to show for it? We already have him embroiled in scandal, for example. The case, I guess, is still being investigated. But basically, when we look at leadership and what we are looking for, is he the person to take over from a President HH who has shown that he can manage the economy, and not only manage the economy, but put us on a path to growth, right? And then there's also the question of how is he casting the vision? What is his vision? Where does he want to see the country in the next 5 to 10, 15 years? What is he actually giving us as a direction for the country? All those are messages that, of course, the opposition would have to work out. But from what I have seen so far, in terms of if we're comparing track records, the president holds water on that. I think he has proven as a private citizen and as an economic manager as a president right now to say that he has the chops to actually lead the nation. So, of course, Ambassador knows Mr. Mundubile better than I do, so maybe he might speak to that.
I'll put it this way, Ambassador, to you, the same question. Do the people really care about that, the track record?
So I love history. Then it helps me cast the future and give analysis. In 1963, the people of Zambia, Northern Rhodesians, just say Zelensky must go. They didn't want the argument. They knew who must go. then they began to choose who should stay. And that has been the pattern. In 1991, people said UNIP must go. Kaunda must go. It didn't matter. Kaunda put up an argument. Colleagues, look at the people that wish to replace me. They are Mandrax dealers. They are inexperienced. Chiluba has never even been in government. And he used to disparage, Chiluba was a short man. He says, how can a 4-foot man replace a 7-foot man? Come on, it's a joke.
A unionist.
Yeah.
Look at 2011. People said Sata is a madman, really. Look at the distinguished diplomat, family man in Rupiah Banda. Well,
but Sata was underestimated, but go ahead.
My point is, Zambians first decide who must go before they decide who should replace that one who's going. And that has been the pattern of our country.
Zambians first decide who must go.
I have a podcast, and probably you have found at least once in your lifetime to watch it. If you listen to the callers, especially when I came to the USA last 1 year, is the rejection on every call was against UPND and President Hakainde Hichilema. Their feelings from my podcast has been that, look, the man could be a good man, but he has divided our country. They didn't expect such an educated man to step into politics of regionalism and tribalism. They didn't expect that a distinguished man like himself, who's run corporates and companies, that could even practice tribalism and the division then that he has spawned in the country. That has been a very big shock to our people. And then, of course, the state of the economy. Well, it hasn't been kind to President Hakainde Hichilema, especially that he fashioned himself that is Mr. Fix-It, that is an economist, that is educated, that has run successful companies before, and therefore running the country was going to be a piece of cake. But this is where the biggest failure has been. From the point of view of our people, we are running the longest cost of living crisis in our country, I think since time immemorial. And if a price of millimil jumps from 90 kwacha and 120 kwacha to up to 400 kwacha, our people don't understand. Whether you are subsidizing that millimil or not, our people just can't bear that, especially in an economy where it's highly informal and there are few formal jobs. And then there are no economic opportunities where people can draw loans, advances, or any cushioning empowerment schemes. There is none. So our people have felt, I think the issue of cost of living crisis is one of the reasons they kicked out the PF. Is that things were very expensive. So other than the cadarism, the default issue doesn't affect our people. It's you and me who can analyze it. But to our people, if they have electricity, they have water, and if things are running, that's the measurement of the economy to them. But one of the reasons the Patriotic Front was kicked out was that the economy was so bad. Now imagine how worse the economy is 5 years later. Look at the cost of living. Look at the statistics. Just a tiara, the food basket. It was at 8,400 kwacha in 2021. It's sitting at 12,500 kwacha 5 years later. Even just the cost of all basic essential foodstuffs, whether it's millimil, whether it's cooking oil, and issues like, economic issues like fertilizer, and cost of electricity and other things. And then the biggest dampener to President Hakainde Hichilema is his ludicrous campaign promises in 2021. He promised heaven and earth to the extent that even if Hichilema has delivered something like CDF, free education, or is beginning to stabilize the economy, it looks minuscule, very small in comparison to what he promised. So his own campaign promises have now, 5 years later, come to haunt him. He has come to the people of Zambia. He has come to the people of Zambia making new and fresh promises. When he said the cost of millimil will be reduced to 50 kwacha, that the price of fuel will come at 12 kwacha, that fertilizer will be selling at 250 kwacha, and that you will slash
the price of fuel come down. Was it yesterday or the other day? Did they bring the price of fuel down? I think
They
Yeah, they
did, but the trouble is you
Well-
have to look at 2021. What was the price of fuel? It was
Mr.
20, it was 17 kwacha.
Mr. Mwamba, going based on your argument, if you're making an argument based on just pricing, then a Zambian can say, well, when the PF came into power, the dollar was this much. When they left, it was this much. When they came in, the price of millimil was this much. When they left, and all those statistics are on the high end. My point is this, and I know you're a politician. I'm not.
No,
But
no, no,
when
no,
I-
no.
no,
Just before you finish, let me make something very clear.
I gave you the
think
time, sir.
we agreed. Yeah, no, I'm going to give you a lot of time. I just
No,
want to
but
clear something.
No.
I thought he introduced me as an analyst and diplomat. I'm not
Yes.
I'm not here coming as a Tonse Alliance or
No,
PF.
no.
All
I
right,
think I've
fair
been
enough.
called as an analyst, and my facts will not favor anyone but the
Okay.
truth.
All right.
So I just wanted
let
to
us-
clear that.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. What I guess what you're making is a political argument, right? Well, you're from an analyst's point of view. What I'm most interested in for me when it comes to the economy is what are the drivers of the economy? And you have to also understand that Zambians experience the economy in two different ways. There's the urban economy and there's also a rural economy. Okay. When you look at all our change elections in Zambia, for example, it is the urban areas that lead the charge to say that we need change because the economy is not doing well. And the reason this happens is because the urban areas are the drivers of the economy. When you look at the majority of our GDP, it is generated in, or the business is really done between the Copperbelt, Lusaka, other urban areas, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I was making this assertion to somebody who said, how come things have improved but people are not feeling it? I said, if you're going to be realistic as Zambians, you have to understand that cost of living will not begin to come down until Zambia begins to post double-digit GDP. That is just the way it works. When we look at China, how was China able to lift people out of poverty? It's because China was always producing a GDP north of 10%. So yes, great. Our GDP is on the rise, but it is not yet enough for the urban areas to feel the effect of that GDP growth because we're not posting double-digit GDP. So when you look at this economy, and I'm not under any illusions, as somebody who's always in Zambia several times, the economy is not the best when it comes to urban areas. Things are tough. Things are expensive. And I think that the UPND would do well to acknowledge that fact. Things are not where they used to be, but we are going somewhere, right? But when you look at rural areas and when you just look at some of the effect of some of government interventions, whether you're talking about social cash transfer, you're talking about CDF, you're talking about other interventions that they have made, the rural areas may have a different view on the election, right? But that does not negate the fact that cost of living is still high. But to say that the UPND or Mr. Hichilema himself has not fulfilled his campaign promise, he was making outlandish campaign promises, then somebody will come out and say, what about your Mr. Mundubile? He's also making outlandish campaign promises, promising excavators and promising to cancel debts and promising to cancel people's water bills. The question becomes, how is that a coherent economic message that actually leads the country to double-digit GDP growth that reduces the cost of living? You see, so for me,
So the answer, the answer is very simple.
Can I just finish?
Oh, I thought you had paused.
Oh, no. Sorry. So for me, when I'm looking at both camps, I'm looking at the UPND and saying, okay, so how do you convince a Zambian in Ndola who is saying the cost of living is still high? Okay. As the UPND, what is your argument to that person? Things are not where they used to be. Things have improved, but I'm not feeling it in my pockets, to borrow Mr. Sata's words. And then for the Tonse Alliance, great, you're making all these promises. My question to you is, how are you going to pay for it? Because if you are going to say that we are going to do all these things, where is the money going to come from? Basically, the question is, what is your plan to grow the economy to double-digit GDP growth so that the cost of living begins to come down? Those are fair questions to ask of either party. But to sit here and be disingenuous, I cannot sit here and be disingenuous and say that things have not improved. The question is, have they improved enough to warrant a second term for the UPND? Or are people saying, this is it? We need change and give the Tonse Alliance another chance.
Okay, Ambassador.
No, it's very simple. You know, you need to carry all our people to a certain education level to have an informed electorate. If you see, if you study President Hakainde Hichilema's campaign messages from 2006, he was extremely capitalistic, free market, free enterprise. By 2011, he begins to see that a good economic argument can't win you elections. He begins to become populist. 2021 was his worst case because you now can't trace who President Hakainde Hichilema is. He began to promise things. He knows that if he runs a free market, free enterprise, that the price of millimil can't come down to 50 kwacha. He knows because there are so many factors that have to go in to bring the price of millimil at 50 kwacha. But despite his knowledge, he promises it anyway. So the Hakainde Hichilema of 2006, who's rooted in realism, becomes aware of the realities of politics. Let me take another example. Member of Parliament. A member of Parliament is a mere legislator. He can't build a road. He can't build a bridge. He can't bring water to you. He's a member of Parliament. He's a legislator. He spends 9 months in Lusaka, in Parliament. But have you witnessed the campaigns of our MPs? They promise that they will dig boreholes for you, that they will build a crossing point or bridge for you, that they will bring the road to you. Some even promise, health centers and schools. It's something that an MP cannot do. They promise what they cannot do. And our people have become wise. They've made the issues of election transactional. And that is where even the issues of vitenges, money, contributions, even to a meeting, transporting people comes in because the election has become transactional. My brother, you are very hopeful that a narrative of a good economy or a narrative of the vision of our country should then persuade the voter to vote for you. I've been in elections where you have a very good candidate and they're just walloped by a guy who comes with a stack of money from Lusaka 2 days before elections, distributes some 20 kwacha, some 50 kwacha, and the good man with good vision loses elections. So you are
that is now our problem as a country that we need to solve, isn't it?
Yes, that's why I started with the issue of education. Until you have empowered voters who are working, who are educated, who are living well, who can make decisions not from the stomach but from their head.
From their head, yeah.
So you see the outlandish promises by President Hakainde Hichilema in 2021. Even now he's making outlandish campaign promises, an international airport to every provincial capital. We have three international airports, and they are struggling even with traffic.
But Ambassador,
just a minute.
Okay. On that point.
And
I don't want you to forget. That's why I'm interjecting. I don't want you to forget because you're talking about outlandish promises. Can we agree, you and me here, you as an analyst, me as a leadership consultant, that it is also outlandish for you as a candidate to promise excavators to marketeers? It's also outlandish for a candidate to promise to pay or cancel water bills for a whole town. That it is also outlandish for a candidate to say, every young person here, give me a few months, in 2 years, I'll produce millionaires here. Can we just agree that both parties are making arguments that are outlandish?
Yeah, I'll come to that, the issue of promises.
No, but
Because
can we just
I'll come
agree?
to that. No, we can't agree.
This
And
is
I'll-
but this is
no,
why
we
I'm
cannot
saying now
agree.
you're
We
sounding
cannot
like
agree.
a partisan.
Yeah,
That's why I'm saying you're sounding like a partisan. If
Yeah, let
you
me
are
give an
saying-
example. When you are in government, promises appear, I'll use a strong word, foolish. Because you in government should show what you've delivered. The issues of promises is only a luxury to the opposition, whether realistic or not. For you in government, your main campaign message should be to show legacy. The President Hakainde Hichilema, in this election, is sounding like an opposition leader, like he's not been in government, or like the 5 years was not enough. And that's my trouble. He's been in government for 5 years. In fact, he's keeping his entire 5 years of failure by keeping on referring on the PF. It's like the clock is starting from 2021 and backwards. He has conveniently ignored his 5 years. When you are in government, promises work against you. When you are in government, you should demonstrate what you are going to build on. It could be a campaign message failure. It could be poor media and marketing consultants around the president, but the president is sounding like an opposition leader. I was telling you the issue of international airports. If he has to be a realist.
But first answer my question. Can we just agree? Because I believe...
Okay. I'm going to agree. And allow me to give you time. We will not agree. We will not agree.
This is the reason why I did not want this to be a debate. Because if you're saying to me as a neutral that the president is making outlandish promises, and I may be able to actually agree and say, is that realistic? But in the same vein, you as an analyst must be also able to look at the opposition, whether you favor them or not, to be realistic and say that is an outlandish promise. So I'm asking you a very simple question. In the same way you're saying the president is making outlandish promises, are the opposition not making outlandish promises?
Campbell, if you give me an opportunity to answer that question, you find the answer.
I am giving you the opportunity right now.
First of all, if ZMBC reports that Brian Mundubile promised excavators and millionaires, for me, what I go...
It's public domain. It's public. There are videos all over Facebook.
Campbell.
No.
Let us be realistic.
Okay, gentlemen.
But let's go to the issues. Before we get lost in the minor issues.
True.
Let's go to the main issues.
I hate to do this, but we have to do it. I think we've beat this drum too much. Okay, and I don't want us to dwell. There are a lot of, we haven't even gone a quarter or halfway of the things that we need to discuss. And the people, thank you everybody who has tuned in. We do see your comments and appreciate the following and the whatever. You see, let me say something here. This was the purpose of this conversation, okay? Somebody posted there that I should have put Ambassador Mwamba with a UPND person. That was not the idea. That was not the idea.
Of course.
Just like I've said, I introduced Ambassador Mwamba as a political analyst and Kambo as a leadership consultant. We are trying to look, the theme is scrolling at the bottom. Who has the momentum to win this question? My next question, gentlemen, that issue, let's leave it, okay? And all that. Here's my next question. There are 7 parliamentary candidates, 6 mayoral candidates, 176 ward councillors who are reportedly standing unopposed. Okay, what do these numbers tell us about the strength of the political parties? What does that speak to?
Yeah, let me just look at my notes. Thank you for that question. I put some notes somewhere. I don't know if I can find them very quickly, but there's been extensive propaganda that, for example, the opposition have not featured in over 75 seats.
Yeah, 70
Yeah,
something.
you must have seen that. But I published on my page the other day the official records from ECZ. ECZ finally released the successful candidates that had filed at mayoral and parliamentary elections. And the details differ significantly. Let me just quickly get that as we are discussing. Maybe Campbell can come in just briefly.
Campbell,
I just
you
want to
respond. The question is, what do the numbers tell us about the strength of the political party if they are not able to field candidates in all the whatever?
No, I think I'll go back to what Ambassador said, I think, in the beginning, in terms of how even the Tonse Alliance has come together, right? There was a lot of confusion in terms of just the opposition coalescing around a special purpose vehicle that they were going to use for the election. Yes. So I think some of these numbers are simply as a result of not having enough time to really organize themselves. I think that
so we shouldn't think too much about it. It's not an issue.
Well, yes and no. If you look at the places where candidates have not been fielded, I think the opposition made a strategic decision not to try and field in UPND strongholds. For example, parts of Western Province, Southern Province, et cetera. So I think that and of course, I'm not privy to any of this decision making, but I suspect that what happened was we don't have enough time. We need to field as many candidates as possible. Let us pick our battles. So I think we shouldn't read too much into it, other than the fact that the opposition may not have had enough time to organize themselves to feature in all these elections. That's my read, at least from my perspective.
No, okay.
I got the details. Thank you. So let me just read them out, my dear brother Campbell, if you haven't seen them. So for mayors, we have 20 cities where you put mayors. The UPND are featured in all 20 cities. The opposition has actually have more candidates. The UPND has 20 candidates. The opposition has 24 candidates. And that has to do, this is for the Tonse Pamosi Alliance. Before I go to SP, Citizen First, NRPUP and RP have 24 candidates, because in some places they have 2 candidates, like in Kitwendola, Chingola, and Mufulira. That's why the number is higher. On council chairperson, the UPND have featured 96. The NRPUP, RP have featured 76. Parliamentary candidates, the UPND have featured 226. They have a candidate in every constituency. Well, the opposition, NRPUP.
It's 225, because I think Lumezi is off the table because of that tragic loss of So 225.
But they are the candidate, so there'll be a rerun in Lumezi, and they are expected to feature a candidate anyway, because they are the candidate, and NRPUP are the candidate. And 190 for NRPUP. So you see that the numbers are not as alarmed by propaganda, where they said the opposition are missing in many places. And ECZ disclosed that 8, like you have stated, 8 parliamentary candidates have gone unopposed. And these are issues to do with various factors, other than the main opposition being away. The independents were either chased out of filing of nominations or were forced to withdraw, like the case in Liua, I think, and about 7 constituencies in Southern Province. But coming to your answer, the issue for our people has always been a presidential vote. That's what matters. In Zambia, theoretically, you can have a president with 1 MP, but wins the presidency. So in this case, our voters are just looking out. Is it Hakainde Hichilema or any other member of the opposition? At least on this platform, we've agreed that we have 2 front runners in Brian Munduwile and President Hakainde Hichilema. So our voters, wherever they are, before they even decide who the MP or councillor will be, their focus is presidential. And you cannot blame them. And that is why any president who wins an election faces battle at re-election, because our powers are so centralized. Our people to the presidents. Our people do not feel the power and strength of councillors, of parliamentarians and local government. They don't feel it. That is why I can live in Shangombo and my small road in my area is bad, and I will say Hakainde Hichilema is not working. The
blame.
blame always going to the president because power is so centralized. And that is why even in voting, that immediately is reflected. Is it President Hakainde Hichilema or Mundubile? And you will see the vote will be like that.
Here is
but just-
something else.
but can I-
Wait, Cambo. Here is something else which, on the propaganda part of it, here is something else which is not being talked about, Ambassador and Cambo. Is it 354 independent candidates? How
Yes.
many are there? 354?
900 here. We
Well,
have
for
highest
the
number.
parliamentary, I think
parliament-
it's 3 something.
For
300 and something.
total independents
Ah.
for mayor and councillors,
Oh.
they are 970. 970, yes.
The
The highest
reason-
together.
Yeah.
And the combination by other political parties, you see, it's just around 300.
Here is the
participation.
reason I'm raising that point, Ambassador Campbell. Okay, what we are this whole argument has been focused on the 7 unopposed members of parliament, the 6 mayors, 100 and whatever councillors, the 334. Now you are telling me 970. And here is the thing. I both want you to comment to this. Most of these independents are former party operatives who were not adopted and they chose to go independent. The focus is coming on Iris and what's his name?
Gary Nkombo.
Gary Nkombo, because of the issues they've had with the president. We have a lot of independents out of UPND. We have a lot of independents on PF. We have a lot of independents from whichever political party. What is this reflecting on this election, Campbell? What is this reflecting?
For me, first of all, I see this as a good thing. And whether we agree or not, I think the thing that has given independents the courage to actually stand as independents is partly because of the decentralization that has happened with the CDF. Because I think for the first time, our MPs realize that I do not need to be politically aligned for me to deliver for my people. And when you look at, I think Honorable Binwa Mpundu went as an independent, if I'm not mistaken. I stand to be corrected. But
No,
you
he's
have,
not
no, not this time, but the last time. I'm trying to make a point. And when you look at Mwambazi in Ndola, when you look at Sande Chanda in Kanchibia, well, Sande Chanda is not an independent, but when you look at some of the independents that were able to deliver for their constituencies because of the increased CDF, I think there was a realization to say, I don't need to be politically aligned for me to deliver for my people. And then secondly, I think what is driving this is the feeling that they have been sidelined by their by the parties that they have dedicated so much to, those that have come out of parties and decided to stand that way. But I think that this is, to me, it bodes well for our democracy in that people realize they can have an independent voice and still represent their constituents and deliver for them. So,
Ambassador?
I didn't want to diminish the role of seats. It's very strategic. For me as a strategist, I know that the word councillor everywhere else is a campaign manager for the presidential candidate.
Yes.
That the council chairperson and mayors are local presidential campaign managers. That parliamentarian is a local campaign manager for the president. So when you are absent in those areas and you haven't put mechanisms to replace that process, it will quickly disadvantage you. Also, coming to face ordinary messages in the constituencies when the people are campaigning. And also when it comes to vote protection, if you have a candidate in that area, he will on his own put up mechanisms to watch the vote, to protect the vote. So there are weaknesses when you do not have candidates in constituencies. So I thought we shouldn't overlook the importance, although I was trying to correct the picture in the statistics.
No,
but
you've
I
done
stand
well.
by
that's a good point. That's a good
That's
point.
a good point, Ambassador, because you see, most people do not. That's the reason I thought we should look at this to say candidacy in a ward, in a parliamentary constituency, it also affects the presidential campaign
Vote,
in
yes.
vote in one way or another. It does affect the presidential vote in one way or another. Messaging. Let's look at messaging in this campaign. Is the government is HH failing to explain his achievements to the people at the grassroots?
It takes us back to that question you threw us away from. So now you are putting it back. So inevitably we have to discuss it. And I'm glad that you brought it in because I knew you were going to bring it in one way or another.
Okay.
The UPND for me, what the failure of the UPND message has been to segment what their achievements should be. For example, if they have $6.5 billion foreign reserves, if they have inflation rate single digit, if they've restructured the debt, a matter that I've always spoken extensively about, and I've said it's a very expensive, a very poor process in the manner that they did it. That is one set of messages probably to sell to your diplomats, to foreign dignitaries, and to foreign media, to present yourself that, look, I'm managing the economy very well as an investor, or if you are a donor, your funds investment is safe in my country because of issues of peace, security, and I've resolved the financial and economic factors driving economic growth in my country. But if you go to a rally in Lundazi and you are telling them about foreign reserves, it doesn't matter. They just look at you and laugh at you because they want messages of fertilizer. Have you brought the fertilizer? I saw the president for the first time when he was in Lumezi condemn the distribution of fertilizer in Medaz, because the issue of Medaz and why the social media laughed at him is that the issue of Medaz has only come up in this period he was president. No, in this period he has been president. There. And Campbell brought one good issue, that there is a rural economy and an urban economy.
Yes.
In urban areas, what matters to them is employment and economic opportunities. Farming, fertilizer, that story doesn't bother the people in urban areas. They want a job or economic opportunities. Is there money in the economy? Can they do their small running businesses? Can they get those temporary opportunities?
Right there, Ambassador. You continue. Right there. Rural and urban economy. Do you see the two leading candidates make that communication to say, Ngabali Kulusaka, they are communicating this way. Ngabaya Kulundazi, do you see the two candidates doing that?
Yeah, so I saw that both of them at the beginning were failing, but I think they all got advice. So you've seen that every time the presidents come up, either pre-speakers or when the main contenders come, they are first discussing local issues, then they go maybe to issues going on social media or national issues. So finally, they are both paying attention. And here is why it advantages the opposition. It's difficult for the president to say, I'm going to build you a bridge here where there's none. I'll do your feeder roads where there's none. And I'll bring cheap fertilizer. The question is, where have you been the last 5 years? For the opposition, it's freeware. They can say, I'll bring you 6 bags to 8 bags. This road I will do, this is promises. And that is why to counter, that is why to counter that, the UPND have worked so hard to try to marry the two candidates, the candidature of Brian Munduvile and Makebi, to the history of the PF. Because if they lock them in the PF, then they can say you have a legacy. Why didn't you do it when you had the opportunity? So you have seen a deliberate ploy by the UPND to lock Brian Munduvile, not as a new candidate leading an alliance of 27 political parties, but as a former member of the PF. Why? They want people to remember the PF, and hopefully that the PF could remember the bad part of the PF and then make it stick to Brian Munduvile. But for the president, is standing on an uphill battle because, I said, yes, Campbell.
Yes, I think you're right. In the beginning, both candidates were struggling with messaging. And I think that they
You
have
think
both.
it has improved now?
Yes, and for the reasons that he has given, because I'm not one just to kind of think. I was watching what the president was saying, the way he launched his campaign in Lusaka, and the first few events that he had, his messaging was very, we call it 30,000-foot view. Like he was talking about things that do not affect the audience he was before. But then you saw that after the first few events, he changed tactics and started pointing to local things that had happened, right? So his main message is when you hear him, he says basically, if we did this, why can we fail to do this? That is how he's countering that whole argument the opposition may have in terms of where have you been? So which is politically astute for them to do. If we have already done this, why do you think we will fail to do this? Okay. The other thing too about the messaging that has been very successful with the UPND is this, and whether the ambassador agrees or not, and I think the opposition has played into this trap. When the UPND launched their campaign, their whole goal is, and number one rule of campaign messaging is define your enemy, right? Define your enemy, define them, and then define your message. So they define the enemy.
How did he define the enemy?
Okay, that was a very, very simple message, but in that one sentence, he is saying these are the same people. They have come again, and they're going to do what they did before.
And
now,
that's
how the
what ambassador referred to that. Yes,
yeah. So now
I don't want us to lose our train of thought. Is it resonating with the electorate?
Now, let me before I even say that, here's how the opposition has fallen into that trap. If you saw when they went to the Copper Belt, what did they do? They had a Jumbotron big screen in the background, and what were they doing? They were playing Mr. Lungu's videos. They led president's videos, and the biggest gaffe of the campaign on the opposition comes by way of the running mate, Mr. Zulu, who said, you see, so now that message that the UPND has been trying to stick on them, which is these are the same people, has now been the same thing that the opposition falls into and says, in fact, what he did, we're also going to do. We are the same people. That to me was a very, very bad mistake on the part of the opposition who are trying to say we are different. That message they have lost, in my view, in terms of them divorcing themselves from PF. They have fallen into the UPND trap of being defined as PF.
Ambassador, how is Mundubile and Makebi navigating that?
Yes, there have been mistakes and gaffes in these campaigns, but the issue of the late President Edgar Lungu remaining unburied, it remains a strong background issue. It's a tragedy that should never happen. That should never have happened in our country, and we are a spectacle to the international community, and even our people are embarrassed. Even if it's not in the forefront of discussions, to put to rest Zambia's sixth president, that matter is still nagging in every mind of either independent PF, UPND, or any Zambian. So attempting to venture into that message, probably the Mundubile camp was trying to evoke those subliminal concerns, bring them from the background more to the fore. Whether that worked or not, that's another matter. The issue of the PF, the two gentlemen, even if they're presenting themselves as new leaders, it's like Sata wanted Rupiah Banda cast as UNIP. That this guy is new wine in old skin. He was in UNIP for 27 years. What did he do? So he was trying to depict Rupiah Banda because people had forgotten about him. He had been in retirement for 15 years. So he came as vice president and president. He looked a fresh candidate. So if you saw Mr. Sata's message was to remind people that this man is from UNIP. There's a very UNIP that you had rejected. So they are trying to do the same, that PF could have been reborn in the new colors of, NRPUP and Resolute Party in the Tonse Pamozi Alliance. Is it succeeding? For me, is that it appears that the Zambians have decided who they should vote out. And debates like that have become academic. Gafes, look at the president. Like I said, international airport. You go into Mansa, you promise an international airport. And the entire country laughed at him. And he's been stuck to that message to try to justify why each province and each area should have an international airport. And now he's marrying it with a university, which our people want. Each provincial center wants a university. He's trying to justify something that, between Campbell and myself, we can't say we need an international airport in every provincial centers. When our 3 major international airports have such low-key traffic that doesn't justify the investment we've done in Harimwanga Nkumbula, Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe, and Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. These are multi-million-dollar projects, but the return on investment will probably take forever. So if we are being prudent with our national resources, if we are being prudent, probably we just need a working airport at every provincial capital. And an international airport, by the way, is just the actual runway. If you put it at 4 kilometers, it becomes an international airport before you even put a terminal.
Huge aircraft.
Yes. So that there should be a proper way of debate. But in a campaign, in a heated message, there's no room for such irrational debate. But look at the gaffes by the president. I think they've been more than the excavators. They've been more from the president. Look at his message in Mazabuka, where he just didn't insult.
But Ambassador, this is why I'm saying now you're sounding like a partisan.
Yeah, our people
you're both allowed to be partisan. Now,
our people have a way of filtering whether I'm being partisan or not. So don't worry about it. The negative score will be to me. But let me put it this way.
Let him finish, then I'll let you respond, because people are telling me I'm letting Mwamba get away with it. So, go ahead.
So my point is, the president has made more mistakes. Look at his messages in Mazabuka. He should have acted with a lot of restraint. There should be an adult in the room. He's president, he's father of the nation, to descend to the levels he went to. And then he used local language. Mwanishwen said, "Shirafina sana in your native language." Yeah, he used local language, and he was fooled by the crowd clapping along. That was a terrible mistake. And if I were his campaign manager, I would tell the president to apologize to Gary Nkombo and to Gary Nkombo's mother. Then he goes to Iris just the other day. Oh my God, it's painful to watch the president saying he called this young girl, he called the father, and he wanted her to withdraw. The quick things between you and Campbell comes up. Iris is standing as an independent. What's the president doing calling an independent? Why is he calling her father? These are national decisions. Why is he promising her things that he shouldn't? This is a corrupt and bribery offer. So gaffes have been made by both sides. And I was agreeing with you, Campbell, not that I was becoming partisan, but because you've been intent on the excavators, I also had to be intent on Gary Nkombo and Iris.
I'll turn into a marketeer just to get an excavator.
Okay, Campbell, you can respond. What's your response to this?
No, I think that the ambassador and I agree that I think when it comes to campaign messaging, they both started at different places, made mistakes. For me, the question always becomes what has stuck with the people. I think after some time, you define your opponent, and also importantly, how are you defining your election message? For the president, I think I've heard enough to hear him make the case for continuity. And for the opposition, I've heard enough for them to say it's time for us to change. Whether or not the people have bought into either message is what the August 13th election is all about. So when it comes to campaign messaging, I think the people will have the final say.
Kambo, what should HH be saying directly to market traders, to the farmers, young people and families struggling financially. What should he be saying to them?
I think he needs to be a father. He needs to strike a tone to say that, first of all, I understand that things are hard. I understand that things are expensive, but I also need you to understand where I came from, what I took over as your father. I had a decision to make whether or not you were going to sleep hungry or I was going to humble myself and grovel to get the people that we owed money to be lenient on us. But that also meant I could not do the things that I promised to do. Things are not what I want them to be. They will get better. I think he needs that empathetic message. And I think, and one of the most important things I'm watching in this whole election for me is student engagement. Because I think one of the things that has been underestimated with the urban vote is the voice of the student. When UNZA is not happy, UNZA becomes the catalyst for a voice in the city, right? But when UNZA is happy, then you have a 50-50 chance of succeeding, right? And what my point is there is that the student movement is a very important movement in our politics. So I'm watching to see, for HH, he needs to be the father that says, don't run away from the fact that things are expensive. Don't run away from the fact that things are not where they're supposed to be. But make the case that they are not what they used to be, because it is a fact. They are not what they used to be. Things are better, but people are still feeling the pain. Ignore their pain, they will not vote for you.
Okay. Ambassador?
From my notes, before I answer your question, I noticed that we didn't attend to your two questions earlier, and also to marry it to Campbell's issue that define your opponent from the two sides. One, President Hakainde Hichilema is head of state. He has inherent advantages. He's an incumbent and he's been in office for 5 years. Then he has state apparatus at his disposal. And that's why he has attempted to manipulate the alignment of institutions like Parliament, ECZ, judiciary, and law enforcement agencies. He's head of state. So he has those inherent advantages. For the opposition, I think what we've seen, even the wave we've seen in the last 2 months, is that there seems to be a strong wind of change. And they had settled that they were dissatisfied with the president and they wanted a new person. There are people that would, have, my dear brother, Professor Jones Kasonso, who would say, he was trying to demonstrate how desperate Zambians were for a new leader, that a new leader may not stand up to the pedestal or pedigree of the incumbent. What were the issues? Number one, like I said, the cost of living crisis that Zambians have been put through, including load shedding that saw especially small and medium enterprises close forever. Then, like I said, the division is something that's palpable in the country, that the country is standing. We've never seen our country this divided, this regionalized, where people need to know where your surname comes from. This has never been an issue. And I think it's a big disservice to Dr. Kaunda, who had taken so much energy and time to unite us as our country. And President Hakainde Hichilema seems to have washed away those efforts. The second issue, you had said, what is the standing of Mundubile in comparison to Hakainde Hichilema? Campbell said, look, this is a successful man. He's now been president for the last 5 years, but he came from corporate and successful businessman, and who is Brian Mundubile. First of all, for me, the most inept person I saw to be president was President Hakainde Hichilema. Because having been in civil service for 20 years, and having worked closely with almost 5 presidents, I found this a major weakness by President Hakainde Hichilema. And what I had hoped that when he steps into office, he wasn't going to bring his colleagues from the private sector to run the country with. In fact, the major failures, why he needs more time, is that he spent the last 5 years learning how government works. To the advantage of Brian Mundubile and Makepe Zulu, they've been in government. For Brian Mundubile, he's been a parliamentarian for 10 years. He was leader of the opposition. He was, provincial minister. He was also chief whip running parliament. He comes from the running of government base. Because the way it is with leadership, and we have a leadership guru here, when you don't have the requisite skills, you bring the requisite skills. This is where the biggest leadership failure for President Hakainde Hichilema is. He came from the private sector. He was trying to run public sector, which he had no knowledge of. And you see his frustration because he kept on thinking if something is not going on, that means someone is frustrating him because they belong to the PF. It took him 3 years and 2 amendments to the law to implement CDF. He just didn't understand. I've always ridiculed him that the president lacks so much knowledge about the public sector that he thinks that CDF is decentralization. He thinks that CDF is taking, government to the ordinary people. But any basic learner of how devolution and decentralization works will tell you that even in our laws, CDF is such a small component in delivering development to our people. It can never work in the manner that the president has taken it. I attribute this to his failure to understand government and to attempt to treat the public sector and the country like a private company. And so he comes out as unemotional, that he can subject the country to 4 years of load shedding, because for him, he's looking at the outcome, the bottom line. If, I can't subsidize, I can't do this. He comes out very unemotional. So when we talk about experience, unfortunately, the issue of experience favors Mundubile, who spent time, especially the last 10 years in government.
Kambo, I want you to sort of run through, rebuttal what he has said. President has been frustrated, and if anything went wrong, he always attributed it to PF people in the system, or whatever way you want to respond.
So there are several things that I want to agree with and several things I want to push back on. So first of all, I think you're right. There was a frustration that he had in the beginning, coming from running a business, and a successful one at that, to operating in a bureaucracy with its red tape. Bureaucracy by design is slow. Business by design, if you want results, has to be nimble. It has to be fast. So I think that frustration, especially the first year, I saw it a lot, that frustration he had. But I think that he has learned. I think that for even being in the opposition for 20-something years, President Hichilema, I think, is now just beginning to become a politician. He is he's now finally learning what it means to be a political leader versus the economic manager and leader. But you also have to look at what were Zambians looking for when they voted him into power. Zambians were not looking for a politician. Zambians at the time, through their vote, were telling us we need somebody who can fix the economy. Okay. You see, for a politician, subsidizing is the way to go. In other words, I will borrow so that the people don't make noise, because the people really don't care how this is done as long as
they just want it done.
They just want it done. The problem with that strategy is that it lands us where we were, where we had borrowed so much money in order to prop up our fuel prices, our food prices, etc., our electricity prices. People forget, but we had a ship that was marooned in Mozambique, which was pumping electricity for us. We owed them hundreds of millions of dollars. We owed almost $900 million to fuel suppliers. So you needed an economic manager who was going to be the adult in the room. And that's what President Hichilema had to do. He had to make very, very tough decisions, which I do not envy any leader to make. But that's what leadership is about. Leadership is not making the popular decision in order to remain popular. It is making the decision that in the long term will benefit the people, even when they do not realize it. So I think I agree that he was frustrated. I agree that he did not know how the government machinery actually works. But I think that trumps the perceived so-called failures that he may have in that department. I think the question that Zambians have is, do you still want this economic manager to continue managing the economy and lead us to a place where we could be a thriving economy? Or do we want a politician who would tell us and give us what we want, regardless of the price in the long term?
In 2021, President Hichilema won with approximately 57% of the vote. Zambia now has about 8.7 million registered voters. This will be our fine winding up question. The winning candidate must receive more than 50% of the valid votes cast. Now, we must understand that is a very important phrase there, valid votes cast, not 50% of 8.5 or whatever. Based on the number of registered voters, approximately how many votes will a candidate need to win?
Don't leave us hanging, and don't put a timer to this podcast. You can go on.
Oh, you have the time? We can,
I'm personally shocked that, like TikTokers.
This is Zambia Blog Talk Radio. They operate on.
No, let's go.
TikTokers, you sleep, you wake up, they're still talking, they're still live. I said, oh my God, when did talking become such an industry? I'm joking. Of course, we have to end. You have something to do and have something to do. But before we go to that question, I need to just respond briefly to what Campbell. He has raised fundamental issues.
Please.
That what did Zambians want in 2021? Like I said, what were the crises facing our country? Yes, we're in default. The economy had faced a downturn, and we wanted someone to fix it. And President Hakainde Hichilema presented himself as an economic manager and Mr. Fix-It. And the two issues he has lamentably failed. And let me justify. The so-called debt restructure. First of all, they've told propaganda that Zambia is the only one that defaulted. You and I know that during the same period, 38 countries, during the COVID crisis, because COVID shut down the economy and its supply chain. It literally, there are only two countries whose GDP registered positive growth. That was China at a mere 1%, and Ethiopia, similar percent, also 1%. The rest of the world registered negative growth, including Zambia, which registered up to negative 2.3. The UPND have run with that story that they adopted an economy that was in default and registering negative growth and taking away the COVID story where the rest of the entire world registered negative growth. What did President Hakainde Hichilema, when he succeeded government, what did he find? He found positive foreign reserves up to $3 billion. Because remember, there was $1.8 billion he had, and in July, August, the IMF released $650 billion to all member states, depending on your investment in the IMF. For Zambia, we received that $1.3 billion, in August. So the foreign reserves were standing at about $3 billion. He had stock in the National Strategic Maize Reserves of over 1.5 million metric tons. And he had a bumper harvest coming on for 3.6 million metric tons of harvest expected. He didn't find a bankrupt country. He didn't find that like he assets. Why I criticize the debt restructure, and I wanted to spend just a moment on it, is that when the PF defaulted, first they had to inform the IMF that they were going to default because it didn't make sense. The economy was in negative, and you were paying up to $1 billion in debt service because the social factor with COVID was going to suffer. And it was authorized. And within 3 months, Ghana, Chad, Ethiopia, and others followed in defaulting. The G20, remember, had to adopt a G20 common framework that, yes, will allow the default, I think initially for 9 months, and they gave a cap of up to 3 years, that the countries that whose debt service was impacting on their economy in light of the COVID crisis will be allowed to default. But there should be a common framework to which they come back to respect the creditors and begin to pay. I just thought that I could put in that story. Where is the debt restructure? Where does it go wrong? Wariangandu had started with the G20 in this fashion. He separated the debt that Zambia owed with commercial debtors like Eurobond, the $3 billion, and he separated the debt of about $5.8 billion with China and started two processes. We hired the famous Lazard Ferres, the French financial company.
I remember that, yeah.
To deal with the Eurobond, the $3 billion. And Zambia engaged in bilateral discussions with China, which even saw immediate benefits where up to $200 million was immediately written off. You remember the 90 million debt to levy Mwanawasa Stadium in Ndola, it was due to be paid and it was written off. It was $90 million. And up to $200 million other loans were written off. When President Hakainde Hichilema came, he abandoned that process, although he came and grouped everything together and began that process, now what we call this debt restructure, which is extremely expensive. And you can call for another debate. We can come and discuss that particular
Ambassador,
matter.
on that point, let me ask you a question, because I think it's this is why people are saved in government. I'll just leave it at that. You want to start the story. No, and it's important for our viewers. Let me. All right. So since we're analyzing here, it's the whole IMF talks do not begin in 2020. IMF talks 2016. We're having these IMF talks. I don't know if you remember, there was a request for a $1.6 billion aid package that Zambia made under Lungu. That is the genesis of the IMF talks with Zambia in terms of restructuring debt, because the IMF was concerned with the euro bonds that we had issued, looking at when these euro bonds are actually going to become mature, right? So this whole conversation starts in 2016. Do you remember that? I'm sure you do. IMF came to Zambia, they left without a deal, et cetera, et cetera. And then 2020 happens with the pandemic and everything comes to a head. This was what was, and to be fair to the PF, this was what they were trying to avoid, because these debts were going to start maturing and Zambia would have to start paying. Now, to start the whole conversation of debt restructuring in 2020 is disingenuous, because 2020 is not the catalyst for the default, for the negotiations. The default is not the catalyst for the renegotiations. It is the 2016-2017 request for an aid package that the IMF did not agree to. So this, to say that this, Hakainde Hichilema found this, et cetera, is being disingenuous to some extent, because this whole debt discussion was during 2016, 2017 and onwards. 2020, they'll come out there with the straw that
let me agree with you entirely, and I'd put it a precursor that it probably might need another debate outside this debate.
Okay.
Just to put in context with what you've said, when the IMF came, there was a huge debate. Remember, the NGOs had published that Zambia had borrowed up to $20 billion from China. And there was a huge debate that Zambia may lose ZESCO, ZNBC, and other public infrastructure because of how much they owed China. You remember that debate?
Yes.
And so when IMF and World Bank came in 2016, 2017, one of the immediate initiative they did together with the Zambian government was the discovery of debt. What does the country owe? So there was a debt audit and debt sustainability program that was done, which now gave us the figures of what Zambia owed in real terms, and agreeing from both parties what the Zambian government said they owed and what IMF and World Bank said. So there was
do you remember what period, just for clarification, do you remember
2017.
No. I mean, during what periods that date was accumulated? What period were they looking at?
No, the entire sovereign debt of the country. They were looking at the entire sovereign debt.
So from 2011 onwards, or?
No. It doesn't matter when.
No, it does. That argument matters, because if this was, remember, PF does not inherit a country that is indebted.
He does.
He doesn't inherit a country that is. Remember, we have come out of Mwanawasa's regime, where we have graduated from the highly indebted poor countries program.
Well, I've discussed this matter here several times. Let me give you this.
But my point, to your point,
just to
your point is this.
We
have to put things into context here.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. Let me freely give the information, and all of you can quickly go to your phone and test the information.
Yeah.
The HIPIC program ends in 2007, and there's a huge debt write-off. We remain with remnants of $500 million from a debt of $7 billion. So as at 2007, Zambia's debt, foreign debt, is just $500 million to the private sector, because these were not sovereign debt and there was nothing they could do about it. But when Mwanawasa dies, he changes ministers of finance. Ngandu Magande had started that, remember the windfall tax and the sharing of profits from the mines, because he didn't want Zambia to go back to borrowing. He wanted domestic revenue to run our country. But presidents change, and Musokotwane comes in. Immediately, Musokotwane abolishes the windfall tax. That could have provided a lifeline for our country. And he goes to the international market. By the time President Sata is winning elections, there is an accumulated debt from 2008 at $500 million. It's now sitting at $3.8 billion in 2011. In 2021,
then why does he go out and borrow?
Or he borrows from China. Remember, he signs various agreements for Mbala Nakonde, Luingu Mansa Road. He signs the Mongu Kalabo Road. He basically went to China. And that's where the biggest borrowing that the PF accumulates is coming from China. And some of those projects, like Mongu Kalabo Road, Nakonde Mbala Road, and the works around the borders, Nakonde, Shila, those were borrowings done by Musokotwane between 2008 and 2011. Some of the benefits are obviously adopted by the PF and say, we've done Mongu Kalabo Road, we've done Mbala Nakonde Road, when essentially there were loans signed by Musokotwane. So he borrows. The PF accumulates a debt of $3.8 billion. 10 years later, President Hakainde Hichilema, these are the figures from their own statistics. The foreign debt is standing at 11.9 billion.
So what is the IMF? Sorry, what is the IMF now have issues with? Because you say that now they have come to consolidate and find out how much debt. So what is that figure?
Why is the IMF coming back in 2016?
No, I get why the IMF is coming back, but you say that the reason why they came back, and one of the points of agreement was to find out exactly how much sovereign debt Zambia had. So at that point, during the PF and IMF talks, what is the consensus in terms of this is how much Zambia owes?
Yeah, so the debt now is around the first discovery in 2017. The debt is at $7 billion foreign debt. Okay, not public debt. Let's just stick to foreign debt. It's the biggest indicator. And if you see Musokotwane, when Ngandu Walyangandu comes on, there is another revision where the foreign debt jumps from $7 billion to $9 billion. And by the time that the PF is leaving office, the foreign debt is standing at $11.9 billion. Because there were many agreements signed that were in the pipeline, like Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe. then big debts like the $2.1 billion for Kafue Gojat come online. So the debt jumps to $11.9 billion as at 2021.
So that's
The
what
domestic
the
debt.
UPND
So,
inherits.
gentlemen,
Yes.
Yeah. So the UPND inherits a foreign debt of $11.9 billion, a domestic debt of 178 billion kwacha. What is the status of the debt now in 2026? The foreign debt from $11.9 billion is now standing at $15.7 billion. The domestic debt from 178 billion kwacha is now standing at 252 billion kwacha. They've borrowed more.
And what is our debt to GDP ratio?
The GDP has been revised. Remember, it was at 21 billion. It's now sitting around 29, 30 billion dollars.
Debt to GDP ratio, because that is.
So debt to GDP ratio has come down to around 80% because the GDP value itself has been revised from around 21 billion to 30 billion.
I know. And that's the reason why I'm coming in, because I'm saying, look, on behalf of everybody watching, I'm like, this is where this is where in Zambia we miss it. So the ordinary person is saying, so if you want to say, if you're Mulelanda, how does it, how am I going to manage to put you Walipa table and all that stuff? You see what I'm saying? We become so technical and intellectual that we lose the ordinary person. Let's go back to the election. Go ahead. 8.7 registered voters. I'm sure you gentlemen have exhausted yourselves with this IMF debt structure thing. Can we go now to the elections?
Yes, let's go.
8.7 million registered voters. What should a candidate get to win?
Well, let me go first on that. The election and how much somebody gets really depends on one thing. It's turnout. Mm-hmm. And from there, of course, we get valid votes cast, et cetera, et cetera. I think that is the biggest factor. We can have 10 million voters in Zambia, but turnout is what actually wins elections. So when I did my Tonse Alliance and UPND paths to victory, I boiled them down to very, very simple factors. Okay. And going based on historical record and just during elections and what it will take for the Tonse Alliance to win, which is an almost perfect performance that they will have to do, is this, right? Assuming, and coming back, just hear me out, because I'm working with the assumption that whether we like it or not, and whether Tonse Alliance says it or not, they have inherited some of that PF vote. They have inherited some of those PF structural advantages in certain blocks of the country, for example, the northern parts of the country. The problem with the North has always been turnout during elections. Whether we're talking about SATA standing or Lungu standing, it has always been turnout. They have always lagged behind national turnout. That is just the way it is. So, for example, in 2016, national turnout was about 56%. But when you look at a combination of Eastern Province, Luapula Province, Muchinga, and Northern Province combined, they only had a turnout of 62%.
Oh, wow.
And it's 52%, sorry, 52%. And even when you start digging deeper into the numbers, you will find, because turnout is not uniform across the board. So, for example, during that same time, during 2021, for example, national turnout was 71%, right? Mm-hmm. When you look at this block again, they only came out at 64% or 66%, right?
Do we have any understanding why it turns out to be like that?
It's just voting patterns. Because when you look at the Southern Province, for example, when you look at that Zambezi block, that is in the UPND camp, you're talking Southern, Northwestern, Western provinces. Those outperform national turnout. So, for example, in 2021, national turnout is at 71%, but Southern Province and all this block is upwards of 77, 78% in terms of turnout. Okay? So it matters who turns out the vote. For me, the Tonse Alliance has one path to victory and one path only. And I can dig into those numbers. It is a very, very uncomfortable conversation to have because it is just basically the reality of how our country is set up. Now, that is assuming that there is no huge urban revolt, because there is a scenario where UPND loses Lusaka and Copperbelt provinces and still wins. What UPND has to do is keep that loss in those two provinces to a minimum. They need to keep it below at least 55% for them to compensate elsewhere. Okay? If they begin to see Tonse Alliance and the opposition in 55, 60%, it begins to be tenuous for the UPND. So they can lose Copperbelt and Lusaka province and still pull out an electoral victory, because history, just from their blocks in voting, actually tells us that, they'll probably have a huge turnout and will heavily vote for them. And then if they can make inroads in Eastern Province, if they can hold on to Central Province, if they can blunt the Tonse Alliance or opposition vote in the Northern Bloc, then the UPND stands a chance of actually winning the election. So, but for Tonse, they need to win Copperbelt and Lusaka convincingly. They need to win Eastern Province convincingly. They need to win Central Province convincingly. And then they need to blunt UPND by a lot. They can manage 10 to 12% in Southern Province. Let me just say the Zambezi block, if they can keep their loss as Tonse Alliance to between 20 and 25%, but then overperform in the Northern Bloc by turning out and voting in big numbers, then that is their only path to victory. UPND has three paths, and I can go into those if you want.
Ambassador, what's your take on this?
Yeah, what causes voter turnout and voter apathy? They are very significant to an election. In 2011, President Rupiah Banda, as documented by Dickson Jerem, said they were banking on Eastern Province as a big swing to win Rupiah Banda that election. And when they were traveling by helicopter, they saw that at polling station, usually they are at schools, there were very thin lines, but where they had come from Lusaka and other places, there were long queues.
Yes.
So the dampener for Rupiah Banda's win was that his people in Eastern Province, he was president. And when you are president, sometimes people are not hungry to vote you in because they think the work has been done. There could be vote apathy in the areas where the president is strongest for two reasons. They may not vote for Tonse, for Munduvile, but again, they may not turn out to vote for President Hakainde Hichilema. Like I said, for two major reasons. One, the underperformance, where life hasn't changed even when they gave him an opportunity. But again, they're not willing to vote against him. And usually what happens is that they stay away. What made Hichilema win is that enthusiasm that if we don't do it, no one will do it. And you could see the voter turnout, like Campbell says, is significantly, although the national pattern of that voter turnout is around 70%, 71%. But the bulk of that 70 aggregates from Southern Province, Western and Northwestern Province. That's where there was a huge turnout. The others thought the PF would win anyway, and they stayed away. And Hichilema also got some votes in areas traditionally where he didn't get the votes. Can Munduvile, like he says, rely on the background of the PF, where he gets Eastern, Muchinga, Northern Luapula, and now Copperbelt and Lusaka are proving to be swing provinces. And then the difficulties that the president is facing in his area with independents, people like Gary Nkombo, there is dissatisfaction in Northwestern Province, where there has been this massive investments, but even basic things like roads are poor. The issues around Western Province, Barossa issue, but also of issues of development, where they felt that the president had 5 years but had not acted. Can the president maintain his stronghold That is one matter. Can he maintain his stronghold, or is there a
Important
crack
question.
in his stronghold?
Yeah.
And another matter which we forget is that there were the votes. I mean, the total registered voters in 2021 was around 7 million. What was the voter turnout? How many voted for President Hakainde Hichilema? 2.8.
Yes.
So again, you realize that there are so many registered voters, but up to 2.5 million, I think, of registered voters stayed away from the entire election. Similarly, you have 8 million registered voters, 8 point something million
8.7,
registered.
yes.
8.7. Is there motivation for them to turn out?
That's a question.
That's a question.
And again, if the motivation is there for the 8.7, the bulk of them to turn up, it will be a landslide victory for the opposition. If people still
Whilst you have the mic, Ambassador, how important and I've been saying this to my friends behind the scenes, for me, it's the registered voters that will decide this vote. For me, how important will young and first-time voters be in this election?
Yeah. So one of the things I did is to, improve on the register, and there are more new people, new young people, the ones that made the swing for President Hakainde Hichilema, and the new voters. Historically, if you look at Rupiah Banda and Michael Sata, the swing votes were young people, because Rupiah Banda was advised not to update the register by his pollsters, but he said, no, we can't disenfranchise our people. And he brought in new voters, up to 1.5 million newly registered voters. And young voters don't vote for incumbents. Young people are always anti-establishment all over the world. Young people are never cozy with government. You and I know that. Because they are new, they are prune, they want a perfect world. And the new young people, like Edgar Lungu, the new young people he brought on the register impacted on him negatively. And they didn't understand that he had built hospitals or power stations. Tabalwala, what do you mean he has built new roads? They don't have cars. For them is, can I go to school? Can I go to university? Can I have Kantemba? Can I work? They have a different story. And usually our leaders forget to attend to the concerns of young people. Even in this election, I have seen very little message towards young people. Yet they are, other than the Lusaka and Copper Belt being a swing vote, the young people are also a swing vote, a block on their own.
And that's why I said the student vote and movement is going to be important, right? Because of the fact that the ambassador has just brought up. Young voters really are voting based on different matrix, right? And so it would be interesting to see if those young voters gravitate towards the incumbent or they go to the opposition. For me, this election, and it's very interesting to see the president campaign, right? Because what I have seen is, I hate it when incumbents take things for granted, okay? But what I have seen from this incumbent, whatever is driving it, is that there is this urgency to make sure that, especially in rural areas, he hits hard, he campaigns hard. Because I think they may not say this publicly, but I think there is an internal realization to say that the urban vote is a toss-up. It is really 50-50. And they possibly could lose it to the opposition. So then the question becomes, where do they compensate? For the opposition, for me, especially, and when I'm talking about the opposition, really I'm talking about Tonse, I think that I don't know how deep their network goes into rural areas, right? In terms of, and by that, I don't mean just reach, but their whole network. Do they have a turnout machine for election day? Because I can foresee a situation, even in the northern blocks, where some of those towns that are more urban vote heavily for the opposition, but then towns or villages that are in the outskirts go for the ruling party. Because of, again, that organization. I think my hunch is that they haven't just had enough time for them to build such a turnout machine everywhere at the same time. But I think if there is voter apathy in urban areas, that means, to me, I think the opposition carries the day. If there is widespread enthusiasm, it's really a 50-50, because you still have people in urban areas that come and defend the incumbent and others that go for the opposition. But if I were advising UPND, I would say to them, go with the assumption that you have lost Lusaka and Copperbelt and concentrate elsewhere.
Concentrate elsewhere. Final question. Ambassador has really challenged us to say podcast takuwa time.
I know we need to come to an end, my brother.
We need to. First of all, gentlemen, before we go, I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this. Ambassador, I know you gentlemen are both happy. To the people watching, this was not meant to be between UPND and the opposition or Tonse Alliance. This was to just do a conversation and an analysis on who has the momentum, okay?
Why are you apologizing? You've done very well.
No, I'm not apologizing.
Don't apologize. Don't apologize.
Okay.
Wonderful, illuminating debate. Very
All right.
good.
Thank you, sir. When the Ambassador Mwamba says that, you need to take it. You need to take
Yes.
it. Thank you. What is the one event in the remaining days that could completely change this race, Ambassador? What is the one thing that could change this race?
I think this race is decided. And for me, I saw, when we dropped that song for Munduvile and Makebi Wengile, I listened to it when it was given a day before. And I've been involved in political campaigns in the past, and
of course.
There's a side people don't know about music that I've been very instrumental in many songs that became campaign viral song. I heard that song and I said, this is a song that will define the election and it will test the popularity of the opposition. And the following day, I was lucky that I was hosting both Brian Munduvile and Makebi Zulu for the first time. They were coming to the nation as a joint ticket, a joint candidate, yes. And I deliberately, intermittently played that song, I think 3, 4, 5 times during the broadcast. And that song went like wildfire. That song has done more campaign, reached more areas than Brian Munduvile and Makebi Zulu will ever reach. That's an indicator. That's usually an indicator, not just of a good song, of how people perceive it electrifies the mood of the election. And that's why, they had to do a counter song, same rhythm, but they had to do Wapompwe as an answer to that song. Yeah. So that the Wapompwe, Vaisafut is an answer to Wengile. The rhythms are all the same and everything is almost the same. But the one single thing that the president can do for me is something that he will not be able to. The disaffection and dissatisfaction within his UPND rank and file. Very loyal members, some up to 23, 25 years have been very loyal to the UPND. And they felt very let down. They were given very little opportunities. And then the newcomers, the Sunday Chandas, the Robert Chavingas and others, these newcomers, millions that have been flooded to them. It's a story of a despondent son who remained in the home, and this child that was given inheritance goes west and comes back. The UPND core members have been very dissatisfied. And you are not seeing, there used to be a raging war on social media, and they were very instrumental, that core group of the UPND. I am a social media native, and I'm having it the easy way, very less insults, very little opposition, just from two isolated. You can't feel, the UPND, they were a war in 2021. You would feel it if you go on social media to try to bring Edgar Lungu's message. You felt it. You can't feel it now. Two, like I stated, the strongholds. What can he do to satisfy the strongholds? They feel neglected. They sacrifice so much, like Northwestern Province and Western Province, including Southern Province. The emergence of independent candidates tell you the story of disaffection within the party. And the president made a categorical and strategic error by adopting unpopular candidates. What he should have done was to adopt candidates that the grassroots wanted. That was going to energize his base in the areas and retire those old guards. But I know loyalty, personal loyalties and personal friendships sometimes takes over. But if people didn't want Jack Mwimbu, we didn't need to create another constituency for him. If they didn't want Cornelius Mweto, who had been an MP for now 15 years, you drop him. So that you don't allow emergence of independent candidates. That was a strategic error that Edgar Lungu made. And you look at, for example, Petauke, the most popular candidate was JJ Banda. Whether Doris Lee had a distinguished career, educated, but the people wanted change. She had been MP for a long time. Nkana, and wherever you saw the independence image, is that you see a leader failing to make a decision and making decisions based on loyalties, where you encourage a loyalty decision. In Kasama, for example, we had to put a candidate who was not popular. And, we lost one of the seats in Kasama to an independent based exactly on that. So the president has two issues in his own party and in the stronghold. For the country, unless they changed gear, the CDF story and free education doesn't stick. People want something more tangible, and they haven't seen it. And Campbell says something drastic. He says the president should be a father and accept when things have been bad. But we've started the journey. No, but what we've seen is arrogance. I've achieved. They even have a list of 96 achievements. Come on. The country is hurting. The country is hungry. The country wants unity, wants to eat. Speak to that message. They are not. For the opposition, like I said, for the opposition is a freehold. They can promise all they can. They can even say they will take Zambians to the moon. They are the opposition. But for the incumbent, the stakes are far higher than that.
All right. Kambo, same question. What is the one event in the remaining days? Is it 12 days? 12 days. That could completely change the race.
I don't know. I don't know if there's one event that can change this, because I think to a certain extent it's baked in, right? I think Zambians will be weighing competency against inexperience. Competency in the sense of, we have had an economic manager versus should we risk having these two people who were in the PF run the government? I think that in the closing days, the opposition has to make a case for trusting them, because their messaging has been all over the place in terms of a coherent economic path for the country. And I think what they're hearing from the president is continuity, right? But then again, I think the president needs to make that choice to say, and have that conversation to say things are not where they are supposed to be. Give me another chance, I'll make them better. And I think we make a mistake. I grew up in Ndola, so I grew up in an urban area. But one thing I realized was, I grew up in the suburbs, Mayad. One day I went because I went to a government school. One day I went and visited a friend of mine in senior compound. And I realized the economic disparities between the two environments. And I realized that the things that I prize as progress are not the same things that my friend prized as progress. For me, having a toilet in the house was not a big deal. But for my friend who had a toilet outside, and graduating from that to go into even a small house with a toilet inside was a big upgrade. My point is this: let's be careful not to weigh urban sentiment with the rest of the country. Zambia's population largely resides in rural areas, okay? 60% of Zambia is rural. That's just a fact. So things that are very, very simple, such as social cash transfer, CDF, a 1x3 classroom block, kids going to school without paying, getting one meal a day at school. Those are big deals for people who have not had. And so for you to tell them to take a risk, it's a very big ask. So to me, I think the UPND goes into this election with a structural advantage and multiple ways to win this election if their strongholds hold. The worst thing that could happen to them on election day is a collapse of turnout in their strongholds. If that happens, Tonse wins. But if the pattern holds, then UPND bounces back to power. That is just my take.
Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time. Before we go, I just wanted to let everybody know that we appreciate your participation. Please follow us. We are here every Saturday, same time. We are ZBTR TV on all the social media platforms. Next week, Mamwamba, I'm going to bring those people that went to, is it monitor the
Printing of the
ballot?
ballots.
Party agents, observers.
Yeah, to tell us what actually goes on. Fish filichitika nga bayamkumona if you ballot papers ever printed. That will be the weekend going into election week. And we do appreciate everybody. We are ZBTR TV. My guests today were Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, a political analyst and a journalist. And you can watch him every day, I believe, on EMV, Emmanuel Mwamba Verified on all the social media platforms. Kambo Lumbila is always talking on social media about leadership issues. I do appreciate you doing this, gentlemen. I don't take it lightly. Have a great weekend. And Mwamba, you said it yourself that we need to do another debate and talk about issues. I appreciate you, my big brother. Thank you so much.
There's what is called the last mile. So you can be having a discussion once every Saturday, probably structure, importing 4 or 5 more debates. Just do the last mile if you have to determine what happens in our country. And besides, our people want more informed views, the way you have brought us together. They want there's no space for just decent debate. And your platform does provide for that. So consider more of the programs during this period. And you can partner with us where we stream you live on many of our platforms so that you even have a wider reach. We collaborate just to achieve that sound debate in our country. And that's what usually lacks in our country. We just have emotional, very driven debates than proper, just rational debates that are nationalistic in nature, that just concern our country. So well done, and please consider doing that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And during, to Ambassador's point, during the week of elections, we'll be doing a show every day just to analyze what is going on the ground. We're putting panels together to do that. Kambo, my brother, thank you. And,
no problem. Anytime.
We'll catch up next time. Yes. All right.
Zambia, hey, rise up, rise up, Zambia, rise up, oh Zambia, rise up, Zambia, rise up, rise up. The voices from the ghetto, strong like drums of steel. Rise up Zambia, oh mother Zambia.